Welcome to Concrete Conversations, the Indian Real Estate Podcast. I'm Akshay.
And I'm Yash, and we're the hosts of the show.
What is real estate as a service? What are REITs and how do they change the game for investors? Is warehousing the next big vertical in Indian real estate?
To discuss all of this and more, we have on the show today Hardik Dutia, investment manager at Mapletree. After completing his MBA from Cornell, Hardik has worked in impact investment and venture capital and previously was vice president of Embassy Industrial Parks, leading the investments, acquisitions and asset management for West and North India.
So get ready for a conversation that pays dividends whether you're an avid investor or just getting started. So Hardik, thank you so much for joining us on the show. How has your week been?
Thank you so much, Akshay and Yash. The week's been good. Can't complain. It's been a fairly short week considering Saturday being Saturday and I have some time to read. So,
What kind of stuff do you enjoy reading?
so off late I've been hooked on to more of political science and dramas, so to say. So very recently, I have picked up this book called The Prince.
By Machiavelli.
Machiavelli, yes.
Wow.
It's a very heavy read.
I remember reading that in college.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting read, to say the least.
Absolutely. So that's something which, a lot of my friends recommended, and they mentioned that, hey, it's something which is very different because until now, everything that I read was either finance or, behavioral finance or, science around that. So this is something which is, I think, very relevant not only in professional life, but also personally.
Yeah. He's quite a ruthless guy, huh, Machiavelli?
Absolutely.
Yeah, positively Machiavellian, you could say. But especially in the world of finance and Indian real estate, I think Machiavelli has some lessons to lend to all of us here.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And especially, the art of negotiation. That's one thing which while I was in the States, noticed that the best negotiators are the best businessmen.
Definitely.
Very interesting point. And since you mentioned the States, can you tell us a little bit about, your journey to coming back and working with Mapletree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So my career starts way back in 2011 after I qualified as a chartered accountant and started working with KPMG in their Mumbai M&A team. Went on to pursue my MBA at Cornell. And after coming back as well, I worked with impact investment firm for a couple of months. And
Nice.
so that was a short stint. However, that also presented to me the opportunity that India has not only in terms of real estate, which I'm currently focused on, but also the other sectors being education, consumer, fintech, post which real estate was more a matter of chance rather than choice to me. Because there's an interesting opportunity to work in the CEO's office that came along with Embassy Group. So this was a platform backed by Warburg Pincus,
Right.
and looking at industrial and logistics real estate. So that's something which excited me because that kind of gave me a 360-degree view of the business. So I saw the entire life cycle of a real estate business in a matter of about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Right from investments to building it out to eventually leasing it and then selling it. So that's something which I did. And Mapletree is very recent. I joined them last year to look at the commercial real estate investments in India. And as Mapletree is a Singapore government-owned organization. So the systems, the processes are very well set, and their worldview in terms of real estate is very mature as well.
Right.
So that's something which I'm focusing on right now, and let's see where life leads from here on.
Fantastic. So you were saying that you got this exposure to different avenues of different industries. Have you been able to combine some of that expertise of different industries with your stint in real estate so far?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think real estate is kind of an intersection wherein a lot of industries do come in to play. And this I've learned a lot in the past year, because this has been by far the most turbulent year in terms of businesses.
Of course.
Now, various businesses have seen growths or maybe drops in the last 1 year. So while we look at our customers, a worldview or a 30,000 feet view of how an industry is performing and what understanding every team member has on that particular industry also determines and helps us to understand, how exactly real estate fits into their entire scheme of things.
Right.
Just to give you a very simple example, without naming it, there's a particular customer from a shipping industry. Now, in the last 1 year, the shipping rates per container have almost quadrupled.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
this technically means that they are riding very high on profits, right? Because
Right.
the number of containers haven't increased, but the revenue per container has gone up significantly. With the same manpower, with the same amount of time invested, if you're able to get 4x the revenue, you definitely know that this guy is doing pretty well. And when he comes to you for a discount, you very well know to tell him that, hey, you are not suffering any turbulence, so let's not even talk about it.
And I think, especially with commercial real estate, it's something where most businesses in the world require some form of office space or the other, right? So you get to interact, I guess, with a variety of different industries and customers that way as well.
That is true. Absolutely true. In fact, the best part about being in this industry is, yes, you get to interact with people from different industries. It also helps you augment your product. So when say somebody from an e-commerce side is a customer, they have so many better ideas which can be implemented and just providing a better offering in terms of real estate. So it just doesn't restrict itself to space. It becomes more as in real estate as a service.
Right.
I mean, this is a word which I don't know if hasn't been used, but I think real estate as a service is going to be the future. And the faster the fraternity realizes it, I think the more mature and institutionalized it can become out here in India.
And can I ask you to maybe explain it just a little bit for those who aren't able to fully understand what you mean by real estate as a service?
Oh yes, absolutely. So with to give you a specific example, WeWorks. Let's take WeWork as an example, right? So
Correct.
are you really paying only for the space that you occupy? The answer is no. You're paying for the entire infrastructure that comes along with it, be it
Right.
the internet, be it the coffee machines, be it the meeting rooms and the spaces, also be the concierge that you get along with it. So
Right.
you technically have to worry about that one check that goes out at the end of the month, but all your ancillary needs for running a business are taken care of.
Right.
It's developing, evolving on that models. There are umpteen number of companies which have succeeded outside of India on this model, be it Regus, Smartworks and the likes. So I think this is something which will eventually come up, and the basic need is give me space, but also give me a service.
I just wanted to ask you, since we're talking about real estate as a service, do you think that it's starting to change the mindset a bit on the developer side as well, where we're seeing, facilities management become an important part of developers' business, or full service offices is something that developers are trying to look to offer, as opposed to, just pre-selling and exiting inventory immediately?
So yes, it is picking up. The target audience perhaps for those full service offices is also different. So suppose you were to give this to, again, hypothetically putting names with no specific examples, but
Of course.
say Amazon for that matter. Amazon has a branding and a culture of their own.
Right.
Now, they may or may not necessarily enjoy or like the service or the experience or the culture that you're trying to create through your offering per se. They would rather stick to their core DNA. So it maybe an Amazon may not be a right audience for such, but if there's some XYZ other company which at this point is a small and medium enterprise or a startup, and it's just growing, and for them it may be a great offering because it gets them rid of the bandwidth when it comes to worrying about all these smaller little factors. So it kind of frees up bandwidth, because human capital is the most expensive in any small and medium enterprise which is growing, which is services based.
Right.
Human capital, as much as bandwidth one can save, is going to be beneficial to the ultimate business object.
But since you brought this point up about real estate as a service, Hardik, I just to build on what Yash asked you and what you've just said. I mean, why do you feel that India is sort of late to the game, or only just seeing real estate as a service emerge?
So I think the basic difference is the ability or the need to hold assets. So uh, say rewind 20 years back, or maybe 15 years back, not even 20, right? So the mindset of most Indian developers was buy, build, and sell.
Right.
Now that mindset has changed from, I would say, mid of 2005 6s until now, to buy, build, and lease.
Right.
So that has been a significant shift, which has propelled real estate as a service, as well as the advent of these newer class of developers and investors who are looking at investing. So that has been a sea of change, right? Until 2005, you suppose you wanted an office, you would have either to buy it or maybe lease it from some individual who owns it.
Correct.
But you could never have the likes of say Mapletree or Blackstone or Brookfield or such institutional guys holding it and being able to give you space of any denomination, right from 5,000 square feet to 5 lakh square feet, or maybe a million square feet for that matter. So that's something which has become available now. And to add on to it, one should definitely complement the tech industry, which has also propelled the growth of the buy, build, and lease model.
Right.
Because nobody wants to, at least for the guys for whom real estate is not a core business, they don't want to fix up or freeze their capital in the real estate vertical. They would rather invest it on their core business.
Right.
Right.
So this is where developers and institutions come in, and they can create quality.
That makes a lot of sense. And do you feel that the market opening up to foreign investment and foreign players, like you mentioned, Mapletree, Blackstone, Brookfield, has augmented this or catalyzed this change, and afforded developers to be able to look at this model more seriously?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think that is one, and the second one, I would definitely like to compliment the Securities and Exchange Board of India, is the formalization of the real estate investment trust rules and the infrastructure investment trust rules.
Right.
So that's something wherein even not only institutions, but now even retail investors like me and you can participate in the share of income from the real estate investment trusts or InvITs.
And since you brought it up, can you tell us, real estate investments trust, we call them REITs. Can you tell us a little bit about REITs, for the listeners who don't really understand REITs just yet, since they're quite new to the Indian market?
So I'll put it up in a very simple fashion.
The simpler, the better.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Suppose you have 5 buildings, which are commercial office buildings owned by a single guy. Now, what this person wants to eventually do is make his share of money. He goes on to Securities Exchange Board of India, says that, hey, I'll be the sponsor of a real estate investment trust in which I will be contributing these 5 buildings. Currently, I own 100% of which, and I am willing to offload 50% of my share to retail investors or institutional investors. Now, again, these numbers are purely for an example. The numbers may vary from institution to institution, person to person.
Right.
Of course.
So this is where people like me and you subscribe to the units of the REIT. Now, what is a unit of a REIT? Now, say 100 was the value of these 5 buildings, and if the person is offloading 50% of it, so 50 out of those 100 units is available for sale in the market. Now, what is the benefit of, say, us holding these units? The benefit of which is, on a quarterly basis, there is a distribution of income which is generated out of those 5 buildings in the form of rent to the REIT unit holders after deducting all operating expenses. So it's a quasi debt kind of fixed income kind of an instrument,
Right.
wherein for retail investors, I think depending on the risk appetite and the age bracket that one is in, there has to be a good amount of mix of equity, fixed income, and debt investments in a investments portfolio. So I think this is a great avenue for people who want a steady cash flow on a quarterly basis and as well as on an annual basis to invest, stay put. And of course, the story here is very simple. These rents in an inflationary environment that India is in
Hmm.
are growing. I mean, there's hardly any market where one is seeing a deflation of rent.
Right.
Right.
So your income is bound to grow at a certain rate. And again,
Hmm.
if there are any discrepancies or what do you say, potential upsides which are available in a market at some point in time, that too, is a bonus that one gets in a good year. So I think real estate investment trusts are a very formalized way to owning institutional quality grade A real estate assets, but in parts and getting a share of your investment.
Do you think that the introduction of REITs in India has helped or will help, democratize real estate investments for retail investors, especially?
I think that is the underlying intent.
Right.
Considering that it's just 2 years have elapsed, there is furthermore opportunity for newer REITs to come in, newer asset classes also to come in. So at this point, all the three REITs that are listed in India
Hmm.
are commercial office REITs. Whereas world over, if you see, the REITs comprise an entire array of asset classes, being industrial, logistics, multifamily housing,
Right.
include storage, self storage, hospitality. I think there's a long way to go. And yes, to a question whether it'll help democratize, absolutely. I think that's the intent, and it will eventually succeed.
And since you brought up various asset classes that REITs hold around the world, in India right now, you're right. We're seeing a lot of commercial real estate REITs, but is it true that commercial real estate has a more micro definition, that there's a minutia to what is considered and what isn't considered commercial real estate, and is not just office spaces and business parks?
That is correct. So it includes the entire area. So commercial is basically anything that helps you conduct a business. I mean, to put it in a layman's language, right? Now, it could be a warehouse, it could be a factory, it could be an office, it could be a self-storage facility for somebody like, say, delivery or the likes, who have now started offering their services to even retail customers. So for them as well, it could work. Or even for that matter, hotels. So in fact, fun fact here, most of the hotels that are operating in India, the owners of the superstructure, which is the hotel itself, is somebody different, but
Right.
the brands that operate are operating on a franchise model or a co-branding model, right?
Interesting. Do you think that, within the definition, warehousing is perhaps one of the next big opportunities for REITs and for retail investors?
So I would say most definitely. In fact, until now, warehousing was very scattered in terms of its holding. Like the transition has happened across the world, be it US, EU, Australia, or even the Far East, the institutional investors are starting to own warehousing and logistics assets in India.
And if I could just jump in here, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the institutional investors are moving in that direction?
So the logic is pretty simple out here. For every 1 square feet of brick and mortar that an order requires, so for a single order, if you require 1 square feet of brick and mortar, you'll need 3 square feet of warehousing space. That's the general ratio. So to satisfy each order, your space requirements increase. Two, in India currently, less than 5% of the population has got onto the e-commerce bandwagon. Considering a population of 1.3 to 1.4 billion, even if you can add 5 more percent to this pie, you know the answer to it. So you have a significant market And the third thing is India, because of its geographical position, is not only suitable for fulfilling the consumption demand within the country, it is best suited to also cater to the demand for entrepot trade because of the waterway connections on onto the east as well as onto the west of the country. So I think this has been something which has led to a lot of not only investors who have money but also end use players. So it can be a great influx point for both the east as well as the west. So this is something which has led to a phenomenal growth of logistics real estate in India.
Just going ahead with the same line of thought, given that there is securitization, there are people are making financial products out of real estate now in India. Do you think that this will cause this industry to be more organized with institutional capital coming in and financial products being made?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and I think that is the way to go. And we have been seeing this more so post 2011, wherein the securitization has picked pace, as well as going forward, there is room only for guys who are playing within the rules of the game.
Right.
So there are no fly by night operators who can survive. There will be consolidation of such operators, and there'll be those handful who will remain and who will also present investment opportunities for young professionals like us
Hmm.
to invest into real estate, varied investment classes.
Understandable. This now with this pandemic, we've seen a whole change in the way people are engaging with real estate. Correct?
Right.
Do you think that this change in lifestyle, and especially this work from home culture, has changed the way REITs in India will look at specializing their asset classes? And would institutional investors drive the demand for maybe more combined real estate, which is like residential buildings with sort of like co-working spaces inbuilt, or apartments that have like a home office as an offering? That's just the residential example, but basically a new sort of combined asset class.
So I think that's something which is definitely a possibility. It would be a prudent hedge if there are mixed use REITs or listed instruments that come up. It would be very prudent. However, when it'll happen is something which people may realize once they have adequate examples of how one is performing versus the other.
Interesting.
Right.
And Hardik, if I may ask you here, with the mobilization of foreign institutional investors in the Indian market, do you think they have there is a strong ability for these institutional investors to drive the kind of products that the developers end up building?
I would say yes, that has been happening. I mean, I don't see a gap there. I mean, that's already a granted. Because see, the problem is the investors don't drive the quality and the type and the offering. It's actually the end users who drive it. So, just to give you a very small example, there's something called wellness rating, which has come up after the advent of this whole pandemic, and it's gained prominence post that.
Okay.
These are very basic things, like to get that particular rating, like you have green building ratings or in a lead or something. These are very basic things, but you need to have, say, a health cafe. You need to have sanitization points at x intervals. You need to also have a certain quality of air filters within your heating and ventilation air conditioning units. So all of these small little things, there's a whole laundry list of items that need to be present. But these small little things are something which end users require. So if there's a company of the repute of say the top whatever 100 Forbes types,
Right.
they will demand it, because for them, employee, as I said at the start, human capital is the most expensive and the most valuable asset in any business.
Right.
So to protect them and to help them feel safe, these are the minimum requirements that end users demand. So developers, whether or not they like it, have to comply with it. Or else, if they don't have customers, they don't have investors.
Right. Just to, since you mentioned wellness rating, which is something even I'm hearing for the first time, is there, given all this uncertainty and change we've seen in the last year, have the requirements of tenants changed when it comes to commercial office spaces, and if so, in what way?
So I think one of the things that at least I have seen firsthand is the requirements have definitely changed when it comes to ticking all the boxes in terms of safety ESG and EHS requirements. So, environmental, social governance, as well as your environmental health and safety. So, on these two counts, they have become absolutely non negotiable. So, that's something which has definitely changed. So, that's something we are seeing in the mindset. And glad that we are seeing it, because until now, at least the experience here in India, the way we've seen it is okay, fine. There are people who will come and work for you. You just get on with a basic structure
Right.
in place, but which has now significantly changed.
So qualitative differences in these spaces, like it's starting to matter to people, and that's kind of translating to tenants' requirements as well.
Absolutely. So, supposing, I mean, again, an example, if you were to say go into work, when you have desks which are, like completely clocked to each other, the distance between you and your colleague is not more than, say, about a hand's distance, you would definitely feel uncomfortable working in such an environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So this has changed. People do realize that yes, the social distancing, any which ways was necessary, was being compromised, but now at least there's awareness because of the pandemic.
The days of 2x2 workstations are gone.
Yeah,
It's interesting to see this transformation though, because I remember back in the day when BKC had just started to come up, the pinnacle of office construction, at least in Mumbai, was like Nariman Point and all. And over time, as we've seen, like Maker is one complex or any of these big BKC complexes, the product has evolved over the last decade, and now we are coming, to something close to an international office space standard.
Absolutely.
and I think we should give a small pat on our backs as well for the new and upcoming spaces. In fact, the standard is much better than, I would say, most of the other countries. We've done phenomenally well on that count.
I think now, just generally with REITs and foreign money and builders, actually, like some of the builders actually making a big, pretty much empire out of what used to be very regional development companies. The stakes of the game also have possibly increased a little.
So the idea is simple. If you're able to prove your business model in a particular geography, you can pretty much emulate it if you have the branding and the morality attached with it.
Right.
That's the basic, right? And that's what some of the big developers have been able to do. Because you have people's trust, you're sure to succeed in the other geographies.
I think that's been one of the more welcome changes, I think, because like we said, like we had one of our guests was talking about working in real estate with foreign brokerages back in the 90s, and how people that would work with him, there would be a bit of a stigma about working in real estate.
Yeah.
And that trust bit has really come around, just I guess with professionalism and capital and all of these things coming together. It's just made things more clean cut.
They come of age for sure.
Given the kind of uncertain times we've seen and the uncertainty in different industries we've seen recently, do you think that REITs in the long term can offer more secure exposure to real estate for investors?
I think definitely yes. Again, as I said, it's a fixed income security. Quasi fixed income, sorry, not a fixed income, quasi fixed income security. Because what's the underlying? Where is the value being generated from? From the building that is standing and from the tenant who's occupying that building or the space, right? And what's the India story? How has it been growing? The commercial office space has grown, I would say, primarily on the back of tech, research, healthcare, and financial services. These are the four main sectors. Financial services is here to stay. As long as there's money involved,
Right.
that's not going anywhere. Technology. So this is as of 2019. So may not have changed much, but the average rents of office space in India are in the $0.75. That's 75 cents to about a $1 across cities, give or take, barring a few exceptions of BKC and the other markets in Bombay.
Right.
So compare that to the rest of the world, where like the cheapest of the cheapest, being Mexico, is still at $20 a square foot a month. Can we afford to have your research and tech backend centers in such locations? No, because then it pretty much makes your real estate cost 20x, if at the minimum. Can we afford to pay the dollar salaries in these locations as compared to paying an INR salary in India? Definitely not. You're not going to get talent. And the third thing is, you won't get the pool of talent which is available here on the tech side,
Right.
as well as the financial services side. So that's something which is here and which is playing its part. So, in the longer run, the global capability centers, as they call it, GCCs,
Hmm.
will continue to remain in India. So, I think that's been a growth driver, and it will continue to grow. And one major subset that I would say most of us are missing here is India is a very aspirational society.
Right.
Whether people want to really work from home, the answer may or may not be yes. But definitely, from what I understand about the Indian mindset and demographics that are prevalent, people do want to work out of an office. Plus, Indian homes are not as big enough wherein you can, kind of have,
Right.
Home
say, in a
office. Yeah.
four
Homes are
member.
smaller and families are larger.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, larger or even for that matter, homes are not commensurate enough to even manage a say four-person family.
Hmm.
You say three of them are working, so that's something which also plays its part. So yeah, I think the office is here to stay. There can be temporary blips here and there, no
Hmm.
problem, but that'll stay.
Since we've just spoken about, the underlying products and assets with these REITs are here to stay. So just looking forward, how much headroom do you see in REIT markets in India? We have 3 REITs now that are just business parks in the most premium markets. So what sort of expansion and headroom do you see in the next few years?
On the expansion side, as I kind of brought it out, the varied asset classes will start looking at it. From what I understand, institutional investors have gobbled up a lot of hotel assets, retail assets,
Right.
logistics assets as well. So once they are of sizable scale enough to be attractive to retail investors, I definitely see expansion happening on that side. And in terms of values, definitely I see, as things mature, as capital markets mature further, the scale and extent of the fundraisers as well as acquisitions will grow. And I think once people also get it, see that the problem is, since the REITs are fairly new products, retail investors aren't aware at this point that, hey, what's the upside for me? Is it only interest or whatever? Is it only dividend, or do I get an upside on my capital value as well?
Right.
So once they see the liquidity being generated in the REITs market, is when I think you'll make it more attractive for investors or stroke developers
Right.
come up with newer products.
So, Hardik, you may not be aware of this, but Yash has a educational content channel called Jump Form, wherein he talks about real estate and finance on Instagram and YouTube.
Okay.
And he recently got a question in the comments about a video he did on REITs. We just thought we could pass it on to the expert to answer it, maybe just a couple of sentences. Answering it will probably help a few of the listeners out there.
Sure.
What is the difference between investing in a REIT and investing in a real estate stock?
Yeah. So I mean, the basic difference is a real estate stock does not guarantee you any income. A REIT guarantees you some income.
Right.
Again, it's quasi fixed. Second difference is in order of preference when it comes to safety. Equity always has like infinite risk. Basically, your entire capital is at risk, right?
Right.
Here, at least, for a matter of fact that you are a part owner. So it kind of gives you an ownership, not exactly an ownership, but it kind of gives you a right, at least in the event of default or in the event the company goes completely belly up, you will be able to get the proceeds out of its liquidation in the ratio of the units that you hold. The third one, of course, is equity. The only thing that you're playing on is the upside in stocks, which is not necessarily quantifiable directly to how the profits of the company are. But in this case, since 90% plus of the earnings on a quarter-on-quarter basis are distributed, you pretty much have that money.
Right, which makes sense. Hardik, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Pleasure is mine, and this was fun. I must thank you for it.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Concrete Conversations on Instagram to know more about upcoming episodes and for some behind the scenes content.
For more deep dives into the world of Indian real estate, stay tuned for more Concrete Conversations.